This is Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa. The story of resurgent and burgeoning Africa is here, only on the Pulse of Africa channel. Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Hello everyone, I'm Tinsai Gabriel with Pulse of Africa News, here to bring you the latest stories and updates from around the continent. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim began his 3-day official visit to Ethiopia this weekend, his first stop on a wider tour of the African continent. During the visit, he held bilateral talks with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and attended the Ethiopia-Malaysia Business Forum in Addis Ababa. At a joint press conference, Prime Minister Abiy and Prime Minister Anwar reaffirmed their commitment to deepening bilateral ties and strengthening South-South cooperation. Abiy described Anwar's visit as the start of a new chapter rooted in shared values of harmony, inclusivity, solidarity, and dignity. He said Ethiopia and Malaysia are well positioned to serve as a bridge between Africa and Asia through genuine partnership and shared prosperity. Recalling his earlier visits to Malaysia, Abiy noted that past engagements opened the door for expanding cooperation. He described this latest meeting with Anwar as productive and forward-looking, with agreements to deepen collaboration across key sectors.
I warmly welcome Your Excellency Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. This visit marks a new chapter of South-South partnership grounded in shared values of harmony, inclusivity, solidarity, and human dignity. Together, our two nations form a bridge between Asia and Africa through cooperation and shared prosperity. Mr. Prime Minister, I had the honor to visit your beautiful country last year. I enjoyed your warm hospitality, and we have had a very candid discussion. I think that visit opens a new door for our cooperation and friendship. Our discussion today have been productive, forward-looking, reaffirming our shared commitment to deepen cooperation across key sectors.
The leaders discussed advancing partnerships in industrialization and investment, with Ethiopia seeking to draw lessons from Malaysia's successful industrial growth. Abiy highlighted mutual opportunities in industrial parks, particularly in agro-processing and electronics. They also emphasized cooperation in the digital economy, financial inclusion, data-driven innovation, and skills development. Abiy pointed to Ethiopia's growing pool of young professionals and the country's readiness to leverage Malaysia's expertise in translating skills into industrial productivity. On green development, Abiy reiterated Ethiopia's selection to host the COP32 and expressed readiness to work closely with Malaysia to deliver Africa's most impactful climate summit. The discussions also covered renewable energy, bioenergy, the carbon market, green growth, and artificial intelligence.
We have also covered green growth. As you might already heard, Ethiopia has chosen to host COP32, the biggest summit on climate. We really feel honored to get this opportunity. We will definitely deliver and make proud everyone who has trusted Ethiopia. But for this, we need partners like Malaysia. We need support from Malaysia on how we can deliver the best COP in Africa. Besides this summit, we also would like to, partnering in renewable energy, bioenergy, and carbon market. These are the areas that we have covered. I am sure we will do something great on linking green growth with artificial intelligence.
Both leaders pledged to advance a more connected and equitable Global South, noting that their cooperation will soon be formalized through a joint framework reflecting shared values and a vision for inclusive development. Prime Minister Anwar described the talks as a serious and constructive, reinforcing Malaysia's strong interest in strengthening ties with Ethiopia.
I think Malaysia have learned as a trading nation with huge investments and trade with the West and the East, United States, Europe, China, India, etc., that the way forward would be to spread out and penetrate new markets in Africa, Latin America, and beyond. That's why, again, I must thank you for your strong support for our membership into BRICS. You are one of the strong voices in that regard. And I think we also use mechanisms like G20, whilst going on with our traditional relationship with America, Europe, China, etc. We want to extend and expand this.
He said discussions covered tourism, research, emerging technologies, and capital cooperation. Anwar praised the progress Ethiopia has made under Prime Minister Abiy's reforms. The president thanked Ethiopia for its strong support for Malaysia's BRICS membership. He also underscored the importance of working together on global platforms, including the G20. The Intergovernmental Authority on Development, in partnership with the government of Ethiopia, will be hosting the 3rd edition of the IGAD Media Awards in Addis Ababa from 29th to 30th November 2025. This year's competition focuses on the theme Storytelling for Climate Action for a Secure, Resilient, and Stable Region. IGAD's head of mission to Ethiopia, Ababo Bahone, said the interest from across the region has been exceptionally strong, reflecting the growing commitment of journalists to climate reporting. Media professionals completed in 8 categories, including print, radio, television, digital media, photography, indigenous or national language reporting, influencer content, creator of the year, and best female journalist for climate action.
The theme of this year's climate change is storytelling for climate action for secure, resilient, and stable region. Under this theme, we have opened for 3 months the competition on our website, mediaawards.igad.int, and we have received more than 400 applicants on 8 main reporting: print journalism, radio journalism, television journalism, digital media, photography, indigenous or national language reporting, influencer or content creator of the year, and best female journalist for climate action. These are the areas that we've opened for competition, and as I said earlier, more than 400 applications have been received, and they have been reviewed by prominent jurors from within the region.
Submissions were reviewed by a panel of senior journalists representing all IGAD member states. Ethiopia alone had nearly 100 applicants. Ababa noted that the 2-day event will showcase outstanding climate storytelling and the expertise of journalists in the region.
So all our member states journalists have participated, including Ethiopia. Close to 100 journalists have applied in this competition. So we will celebrate those success, those expertise and storytelling of our journalists and content creators on this month, November 29th and the 30th at Skylight Hotel. And then the second day, we'll have the celebration dinner. And this is successfully done with the support, very strong support of the government of Ethiopia and our partners, Exim Bank and POA, and Ethiotel as well. I would like to take this opportunity to appreciate all our partners, friends who stood with us to make this event successful and colorful.
He also recognized the vital backing from major partners such as the government of Ethiopia, Exim Bank, and Pulse of Africa, which collaborated to establish the IGAD Media Awards. This highlights the region's unified dedication to support media professionals and leveraging storytelling to promote peace, resilience, and sustainability in the Horn of Africa.
38.
They shaped history. They inspired generations. They are the notables. Join us as we honor Africa's greatest minds and trailblazers, the notables, celebrating Africa's icons.
Rwandan President Paul Kagame held talks with Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Ahmad Al Thani in the eastern province of Bujassara, where the two leaders discussed ways to further strengthen bilateral relations between their countries. The meeting focused on expanding cooperation across multiple sectors, with both sides expressing commitment to enhancing political, economic, and development partnership. President Kagame and Amir also exchanged views on key regional and international issues of mutual interest, reaffirming their shared commitment to dialogue and collaborative solutions. The visit underscores the growing strategic partnership between Rwanda and Qatar, built on increasing investment, diplomacy, and regional cooperation. The United Nations Support Mission in Libya, together with the African Union, European Union, and League of Arab States, co-chaired a meeting of the International Follow-up Committee on Libya in Tripoli. The meeting focused on the first two milestones of the UNSMIL facilitated political roadmap, reconstituting the HNEC Board of Commissioners and amending the constitutional and legislative framework for national elections. Representatives of the House of Representatives and the High Council of State reported progress on reconstituting the HNEC board and requested further UNSMIL support to finalize the tasks. Members were urged to complete these milestones promptly, noting that 3 months have passed since the roadmap was presented to the UN Security Council. Discussions also covered preparations for the upcoming structured dialogues and how IFCL and Berlin process members could contribute to its implementation. The plenary included representatives from over 20 countries, the African Union, European Union, and League of Arab States. Moving on to business news, the African Continental Free Trade Area is opening new opportunities for smoother and more competitive cross-border trade, especially in grains, pulses, and oilseeds, according to Eastern African Grain Council Executive Director Gerald Masila. He said the AFCFTA is helping formalize more trade, lower business costs, and strengthen agriculture value chains, improving food security across the continent. Kenya currently imports nearly 70% of Ethiopia's regional pulse exports, a volume expected to rise under preferential tariffs. Reduced charges will also make Ethiopian soybeans more competitive, supporting livestock sectors such as dairy and poultry.
When we now start trading under the SCFTA, then there will be more preferential tariffs. Much of the transactions will become formal, going through the formal channels and making sure that the necessary revenues are also going to government. And through trading under the SCFTA, we know that there will be reduced cost because taxes now will be under SCFTA. Sea and access to the sea gives Ethiopia a very important pathway to be able to connect and engage in the world market. And being not able to access a seaport or the oceans is an issue, because that increases your shipping costs and makes you as an origin, makes Ethiopia as an origin a little bit more costly and therefore not competitive. And so indeed, not just the port, but the entire trade infrastructure, including the roads and the rails. We should be talking about investing in railways that are connecting the hinterlands to the ports, so that we look at all the infrastructure investments we need to put to bring down the cost and make this region and Ethiopia a competitive origin of agricultural produce, particularly oilseeds, that Ethiopia is able to produce very well.
Masila added that the AFCFTA gives Ethiopian exporters better access to global markets through regional ports. Nigeria's National Sesame Seeds Association Secretary, Iyasu Ishak, noted Ethiopia's leading role in Africa's agriculture, exporting over 350,000 metric tons of pulses annually.
A wonderful initiative that will further strengthen or enhances the intra-regional trade among African countries. Africa, being a country of 1.4 billion people, is enough market for itself. So AFCFTA is actually a game changer. I mean, if you follow the policies export trend in Ethiopia, you can see that one of the leading important countries of Ethiopian policy is actually Kenya, which is a AFCFTA member country. So if we can leverage the African market, 1.4 billion people, it's enough market for our product. It will help in boosting our economy in African continent and at the same time create jobs for the teeming population of the African people.
With AFCFTA connecting Africa's 1.4 billion people, officials say Ethiopia is well positioned to expand its regional and global market footprint. Ishak stressed that the market is sufficient to support the continent's economies while boosting job creation and strengthening business opportunities for producers, processors, and exporters. With the AFCFTA's preferential tariffs and improved regulatory harmonization, cross-border trade is expected to grow even further, he pointed out. African and global business leaders have endorsed a manifesto in Johannesburg at the Taha CEO Dialogue aiming to accelerate Africa's economic development. The manifesto focuses on closing critical infrastructure gaps, including transport, ports, and power grids, and mobilizing $4.3 billion annually in renewable energy investments to 2050. It also highlights the need to close the $331 billion financing gap for SMEs, expand visa-free and digital mobility, and strengthening trade and talent flows across the continent. Leaders emphasized that Africa's growing youth population offers immense economic potential, urging investment in education, skills, and health to ensure inclusive growth. Stable and transparent regulations were identified as crucial to attracting and retaining foreign direct investment, which could increase by up to 30%. The initiative underlines the private sector's role as a driver of Africa's economy, contributing over 80% of production and 90% of employment, and positions continental collaboration as key to unlocking Africa's full economic potential. Moving on to sports news, Ireland will face world champion South Africa in Dublin's Aviva Stadium on Saturday, aiming to measure their progress in the 2025 Quilter Nations Series. The match concludes Ireland's November internationals following a loss to New Zealand in Chicago and wins over Japan and Australia. Hooker Dan Sheehan said the fixture will be a great maker for the squad. Ireland, currently building momentum under coach Andy Farrell, has focused on improving line-out execution, defense around the ruck, and discipline. South Africa's physicality and quick ball play will test Ireland's readiness ahead of the 2026 World Cup. The series offers Irish fans a chance to see their team compete against top-tier opposition, continuing a recent pattern of challenging encounters with the Springboks. Next, we'll share the latest weather forecast. Thank you for watching Pulse of Africa News. Stay with us for more important stories from across Africa.
The Horn of Africa stands as one of the most strategically significant regions, stretching along the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. It is a gateway to global trade routes. Yet this geographic advantage is often overshadowed by persistent challenges: fragile governance, recurring conflicts, food insecurity, and the devastating impact of climate change. External powers, from global superpowers to regional actors, have long recognized the Horn's importance, and they are being involved in the region. For the countries of the Horn, this involvement presents both opportunities and dilemmas. How can the nations of the Horn of Africa transform external engagement into a pathway for stability and prosperity? Hello and very warm welcome. This week's edition of Roundup is devoted to Horn of African affairs. Stay tuned. So for this important dialogue, I'm joined by a colleague of mine, Getinat Shengude. How are you doing, Getinat?
Hello, Zalema. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. How do you explain the current state of the Horn of Africa? As I said in the beginning, of course, the Horn of Africa is facing persistent challenge related to conflict, crisis, drought, climate-induced problems, and many socio-economic problems. And of course, we know the Horn of Africa has huge potential for development, prosperity, stability, democracy, and so on. But how do you explain, from your vantage point, what is the current state of the Horn of Africa?
Absolutely, Zalalem, as you precisely explained from the very beginning of our discussion. When talking about the Horn of Africa, predominantly the East African region, it's the two sides of the story. The East African region, the Horn of Africa, presents a dual narrative. On the one hand, this region presents or holds a very important and remarkable potential for development and regional integration, which is predominantly driven by natural resources, tremendous natural resources and abundant natural resources, and also youth population, as well as its geopolitical strategic position for the global trade. Especially this region is located between very important maritime trade routes, which are the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. But it's unfortunate, on the other side, this region is still facing tremendous and persistent challenges, as you have mentioned earlier: political instability, conflict, terrorism, transboundary crimes, environmental vulnerability, and as well as many challenges. These challenges became an obstacle of the regional development to realize its development aspiration and its development endeavors. So when you're talking about the East African region, we have this kind of a dual reality. On the other side, tremendous opportunities, and on the other side, complex challenges that has been still being exacerbated, especially by the internal forces, the external forces. I mean, especially those superpowers or emerging powers who have a lot of demand to control these very important trade routes we have already mentioned earlier, and that resulted in instability for many decades in this region, Zalalam.
Absolutely, Getinat. The Horn of Africa is the most fascinating region of Africa, located in the northeastern part of the continent. But the Horn of Africa is also volatile. There are conflicts, interstate conflict, intrastate conflict, conflict within states, and conflict between states. So the Horn of Africa is, of course, exposed to enormous challenges as well. But like you rightly said, the Horn of Africa is, of course, attracting international actors, attracting regional and global powers. And I think it's pretty much important to mention why the Horn of Africa is strategically important to the rest of the world. Of course, there are enormous factors in this regard. The Horn of Africa is situated at the crossroad of major international shipping lines, such as the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and the Indian Ocean. and because of that, it attracts the attention of international powers. Bab el-Mandeb Strait is also here in the Horn of Africa. The other factor that makes the Horn of Africa strategically important is, of course, its proximity to the Middle East. And we know the significance of the Middle East, the political and economic significance of the Middle East. And because of the Horn of Africa's closeness to the Middle East, the Horn of Africa is, of course, attracting the attention of the global powers. And the other factor that makes the Horn of Africa strategically important is its natural resource. The Horn of Africa is endowed with enormous natural resources such as oil and gas. And the Horn of Africa also possesses rare earth elements which are very much important, for example, for batteries of electric cars, for cell phones, and for manufacturing high-tech weapons. And the other factor that makes the Horn of Africa such a strategically important region for the wider world is, of course, it's the military presence of regional and global powers. As we said, the Horn of Africa is strategically important, and because of that, global powers and regional powers are establishing their military base in the Horn of Africa. Many superpowers, United States, China, Russia, and European countries such as France, Germany, United Kingdom, and Gulf countries as well, such as United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, and others have established their military base in the Horn of Africa. Of course, they established their military base to secure their interest and to promote their interest in the Horn of Africa, and of course to make sure the safety of maritime trade in the Horn of Africa. So because of this and other factor, the Horn of Africa is attracting the attention of regional and global powers, and because of that, they are coming in the Horn of Africa, and the Horn of Africa is influenced by the interests of those regional and global actors. So Getnet, I would like you to tell us a little bit about the challenges and the opportunities posed by those global and regional powers. What challenge is the Horn of Africa facing because of the involvement of those regional and global powers, and what opportunities are offered by those external actors?
Sure, Zalalam. So as you said again precisely, this region is very important, and it has its own natural resource which can attract the foreign powers. By the way, we are living in a very dynamic world. It's a global shift, a geopolitical shift, and Africa, not only the East African region actually, as a continent, has become a spotlight for global powers, because of it is, as you mentioned, natural resource. It is dynamic population. When we're talking about natural resource, the continent, as well as this part of region, the East African region, and the whole is very important minerals, the critical minerals, which is became parts of, sometimes an curse and a battle to control these resources because of its significance for technology, for cell phones, and for military equipment and other importance. So the continent, of course, became a very important part of the world for global powers. And when it comes to the resource, especially, particularly in the Horn of Africa, those countries, almost all the countries have their own natural resources, and including oil and gas, gold, as well as arable lands, and very important water basins like the Nile River, and also importance of trade. So these countries, because of their resources, and became a spotlight for global trade and global superpowers. This region, despite its natural resource, it is a battleground for sometimes for global geopolitical competition, and the country should, as maybe actually we will come to this, how the country come together and facilitate regional integration and work for the future prosperity.
Exactly. Yeah, we will come to the cooperation and the integration, the significance of working together later in our roundup. But let us talk a little bit about the manifestation of the external factors, the involvement and the engagement of external factors in the Horn of Africa. There are many manifestations in this regard. We have seen large influx of foreign direct investment, increase in foreign direct investment in the Horn of Africa, and we are also witnessing the militarization of the Horn of Africa, and we have also seen the proliferation of seaports, the ever increasing of seaports in the Horn of Africa. So if we see, for example, the militarization of the Horn of Africa, as we said, because of its strategic significance, many global and regional powers are establishing their military base in the Horn of Africa, and this is further exacerbated and triggered by global rivalries. There is a rivalry between China and United States, for example, and the two superpowers are establishing their military base in the Horn of Africa, and that has to do with power projection. Power projection is a situation where countries are building and establishing their military presence, their military base outside of their soil. So those superpowers like China, Russia, and United States are building their military base outside of their territory here in the Horn of Africa, and that's triggered by their rivalry. We have also seen enough manifestation of competition between China and United States, for example, in the form of trade war. And we have also seen the proliferation of seaports in the Horn of Africa. From Sudan to the north, to Kenya to the south, there is abundant potential for the development of seaports. From Sudan to Kenya, there is like 4,000 kilometer coastal line, and that's very much important for establishing seaports. So we have seen the establishment of new seaports. We have seen the development of seaports. We have seen infrastructures around seaports. And we have already seen the manifestation of the proliferation of seaports in the Horn of Africa. So exactly, the Horn of Africa is hosting influence from external actors. So there is a fear that the involvement of those global and regional powers might bring catastrophic danger to countries of the Horn of Africa. For example, the global powers, United States and China, are already in trade war. For example, if they turn the trade war into another war, they are going to use countries of the Horn of Africa as proxy, and the Horn of Africa is going to be a chessboard, playground for those superpowers. So there is frustration in this regard, and there should be a mechanism and there should be a way out to withstand the challenge posed by those superpowers and regional powers. And we are also witnessing the rivalries between Gulf countries, for example, between Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and Qatar and other Gulf countries. They are competing. And we have seen their competition, and we have seen how those regional powers are using other countries as proxies.
Yeah, exactly, Zalam. Despite the negative side of those global powers, and also we have been witnessing tremendous opportunities in this part of region. For instance, some emerging power, including China, have brought tremendous investment in technological opportunities for this region. For instance, we have been witnessing lots of giant projects in the Horn of Africa, which these global powers, especially emerging powers like China, United Arab Emirates, Turkey, have given lots of investment, in road construction, in railway construction, in digital technology, and as well as in port construction. A good example is, for instance, the Ethiopian Djibouti Railway, Addis Ababa Djibouti Railway, which is one of a good example to connect and facilitate probably the regional integration aspiration between not only Ethiopia and Djibouti, but the entire Horn of Africa or this African region. We have another development project is, for instance, a road corridor development between Ethiopia and South Sudan, between Kenya and Uganda, and many other nations. And those superpowers, especially those emerging powers, have had their own contribution to facilitate this investment and create this opportunity. Despite the expected frustration, maybe countries, especially the South African region, became a proxy for superpowers. But there is also an opportunity if countries, especially the South African region, can manage effectively and create their own connectivity and their own integration despite those challenges. So we have also this kind of opportunity being delivered in this region, I would say, Zalala.
Exactly. As you rightly explained, Gittinat, the involvement of external actors, global powers and regional powers in the Horn of Africa is a double-edged sword. It has its own opportunities and challenges. I have mentioned the challenge and you have explained the opportunities. And of course, we have to see the involvement of those external actors from both lenses, from opportunities and challenges. For example, with regard to the opportunities, as you said, we have seen foreign direct investment, increase in foreign direct investment from Gulf countries, from China. For example, as you rightly mentioned, the railway that connects Ethiopia with Djibouti is much funded by China, and that's great for the development endeavor of the country, of Ethiopia and Djibouti as well. China has helped Ethiopia to connect its land to the sea, and that's what Ethiopia has been hungered of. So this is very much important that those global powers are also bringing opportunities. They offer investment opportunities, development opportunities, funding opportunities as well. There are also other opportunities with regards to the engagement of global actors. For example, Europeans and Americans and others are also supporting security activity in the Horn of Africa. This is very much important for countries of the Horn of Africa. For example, if we see Somalia, the state of Somalia, I mean, the country has been grappling with lots of crimes such as terrorism, organized crimes like piracy and others. So the support that it receives from those regional and global actors is huge, and it can utilize those support. It can harness that opportunity to make the country more stable. Of course, Somalia has become more stable than it was before. Those European countries, Americans and Chinese, they are also giving security apparatus, security equipments, and they are also training professionals in the Horn of Africa, security professionals, and that's very much important for ensuring peace and security in the Horn of Africa. The other advantage by those external actors is investment. We have seen huge foreign direct investment coming from Gulf countries like United Arab Emirates. We have seen the development of ports. We have seen infrastructures around ports. So that's very much important, and the Horn of Africa cannot afford to ignore those opportunities. Surely there are opportunities brought by external actors, and of course we shouldn't undermine and we shouldn't overlook the challenge from those external actors. And of course one of the challenges, huge dependency on those external actors may undermine sovereignty. I mean, if countries are receiving funds, receiving development aids from those external actors, they will not be capable of passing decisions independently. So that will erode the sovereignty of countries. So they have to be very much careful about their relationship with external factors. They have to harness the opportunities, and at the same time, they should never undermine the challenge of
exactly, Jalal. And I can add something, as you rightly elaborated, that the problem is for the East African region countries and seizing the opportunity and change into a good thing. Of course, global powers come here with technology and many and many opportunities. But what the nations are repeatedly failing to, mitigate their internal political turmoil and making a transition and democratic transition and ensure prosperity in this region. So what we are insisting here, the nations should seize this opportunity and also exploit those technology and also those kind of investment and opportunities from these global powers, from these competing global powers, because they seize a lot of opportunities, technology, resource, and investment and capital. So where the countries come together and end such kind of political turmoil, especially internal political turmoil, and ensure good governance.
There are opportunities, no doubt, no question, no dilemma. There are opportunities, there are challenges. So it's going to be up to countries of the Horn of Africa to manage those opportunities and to withstand those challenges. And the best way to manage the challenge, to withstand the challenge, to tackle the challenge posed by those external factors is, I think, cooperation and integration in the Horn of Africa. Sure. Countries of the Horn of Africa badly need integration and cooperation. No country is self-sufficient by itself. Every country needs something from the other. And the resources in the Horn of Africa are complementary. I mean, for example, Ethiopia has huge population, a huge market, expanding economy, ever-increasing economy. Ethiopia has been the fastest growing economy in the world, one of the fastest growing economy in the world. So countries of the Horn of Africa cannot afford to lose the market of Ethiopia, and they should utilize Ethiopia's huge market. For example, Eritrea can get a lot from Ethiopia by engaging with Ethiopia, by cooperating with Ethiopia, by integrating in the Horn of Africa. Somalia can be benefited from Ethiopia's economy. And Ethiopia can benefit from its neighbors, such as from Djibouti, from Eritrea, from Somalia. So they need to strengthen cooperation and integration between and among countries of the Horn of Africa. For example, Ethiopia has constructed the largest dam in Africa, called the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. So Ethiopia is exporting energy for countries of the Horn of Africa, for Eastern African countries as well. So those countries, those Horn countries, can buy Ethiopia's electricity with cheap price, so they can be benefited from Ethiopia's energy projects. And in the same token, Ethiopia can access sea through Somalia, through Eritrea. So Ethiopia can collaborate with Horn countries and can expand its sea access. So there are lots of opportunities for integration, for cooperation. And of course, the only way to withstand the challenge of external actors is through cooperation. Cooperation in the sense of brotherhood. And that reminds me the saying put in the famous writer and author of Chinua Achebe. And Chinua Achebe, in his book called Hour of God, he put the saying like, when brothers fight, the stranger will reap the harvest. So when countries of the Horn of Africa get into conflict, get into fight, get into war and crisis, strangers, external actors, will benefit from the resource of the Horn of Africa. So the countries of the Horn of Africa need to keep their resource and need to utilize their resource wisely, and through integration, through cooperation, through sense of brotherhood and neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the region now is still grappling with so many challenges, both the external factors as well as the domestic factors. And for instance, if you take the climate situation, and unlike many parts of the African region, this African region is highly vulnerable. We have witnessed tens of millions of people displaced because of climate-induced impact and recurrent droughts over the last 2 or 3 decades, and this requires to mitigate this impact, and the responsibility is on the nation. And for instance, there are some attempts, good attempts. For instance, Ethiopia is trying to mitigate an environmental or climate change impact problems. We can mention the Green Legacy Initiative, which the country has managed to plant close to 50 billion trees, which is absolutely a great move, not only in the East African region, in Africa, but at a global level. And Kenya doing the same thing somehow, and also some countries are trying to this. But that's not enough. It requires collaboration and work together to accelerate and solve the problem. And IGAD, in a regional organ, is trying to help the countries by giving, prediction and very important intelligence data for environment. So this has to be reinforced. On the other side, as you said, regional integration is not just a matter of rhetoric, it's a matter of survival. Yeah. Unless countries come together, they will continue in a fragile manner, and they will continue sometimes in their fighting, and sometimes continue affected by environmental impacts and displacement. So it is urgent, very important to come together and facilitate regional integration. For instance, recent time, again, I can mention here Ethiopia has initiated, the interest to have access to the Red Sea. But there is some kind of a negative rhetoric and trying to antagonize the recourse rather than taking a positive move that would benefit not only Ethiopia but also the regional countries, because Ethiopia, as you said earlier, and a sizable economy as well as significant population, the second population in the continent, huge market, the state of the African Union, that would help the regions, to access this market, also probably to use its resource also. For instance, at the same time, it has inaugurated the Grand Ethiopian Sense Dam, which is an important project to integrate the region through power. Of course, the country has already started to exporting the power to many of the East African regions. And the same thing Eritrea has. Of course, it has its own port, but when Ethiopia is going to start to manage and use the sea and the port, that will benefit the population of Eritrea, not only Eritrea, also Somalia and many other nations. So countries come together and manage their resources and put the way how we commonly use and manage and ensure prosperity, because there's a lot of similarity, by the way, with the population of the East African region in terms of culture, in terms of linguistic culture, as well as religion. Yeah, there's a lot of similarity, but the destiny of this population is integration and coming together rather than creating a fragile, also a battle or a conflict. It is very important to see things in this manner. So there are lots of opportunity in this case.
That's great, getting it. Sometimes it's puzzling to see that some countries in the Horn of Africa are trying to marginalize and isolate Ethiopia from the Red Sea, which is the nearest sea, the nearest important waterway for Ethiopia. So cooperation and integration and collaboration in the Horn of Africa is very much important. As you rightly said, I like the way you explain. Integration for the Horn of Africa is not a matter of rhetoric, but survival. Unless countries of the Horn of Africa are collaborating on the issues of the Horn of Africa, they will face the challenge and they will face the negative consequence. For example, we have seen civil war going on in Ethiopia's next door, Sudan, and the ongoing war, the lingering crisis there is creating significant hurdle and obstacle in countries of the Horn of Africa. For example, Ethiopia is receiving thousands of migrants from Sudan, so the problem of Sudan is becoming Ethiopia's problem, and the problem of Sudan is becoming the challenge of its neighbors. So unless countries of the Horn of Africa are managing the crisis together, and unless the Horn of Africa are utilizing the resources of the Horn of Africa, like the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. The Horn of Africa is, endowed with enormous natural resources. So the countries of the Horn of Africa need to cooperate, need to collaborate, need to integrate. And as you said, that is not the matter of rhetoric, but a matter of survival. And that brings us to the end of our weekly roundup.
Thank you so much, Zalal, and appreciate it for the discussion.
Dear viewers, you have been watching our weekly edition roundup. We hope that you have enjoyed the program as much as we did. Many thanks for watching, and see you then.